was a bitterly cold New Year's Eve in rural Maine when Rachel and her friends decided to spend the night in an old lighthouse on the coast. Locals called it Crow's Point Light, abandoned since the 1920s after the lighthouse keeper and his family vanished without a trace. Rumors said the fog rolled indifferently there, thicker, almost alive, and sometimes you could hear voices over the wind. The group arrived in 2 SUVs, headlights cutting through the dense fog. The lighthouse tower loomed above them, rusted metal railings spiraling up into darkness. The door creaked as they pushed it open, revealing a spiral staircase and the scent of salt and decay. Rachel felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold. "Let's just set up near the keeper's old room," she whispered. Her friends agreed, though their eyes kept flicking toward the shadowed corners. By 11 p.m. they had set up candles, blankets, and snacks in the main room. Outside, waves pounded the rocky shore and the fog pressed close, like it wanted inside. Rachel noticed the lighthouse windows were dirty, but she could swear she saw movement, figures standing on the cliffs, staring. When she mentioned it, her friends laughed nervously. "Probably the fog playing tricks," said Mark, but even he didn't sound convinced. At midnight, the wind picked up sharply. The candle flames flickered, and whispers began weaving through the lighthouse, unintelligible but urgent. The group froze. Then came the knocking, soft at first like someone tapping from inside the walls. Tap, tap, tap. It moved up the staircase rhythmically. One by one they went to investigate, and that's when the real terror began. In the keeper's old quarters they found walls covered in strange symbols, drawn in what looked like dried salt and ash. The air was icy, and the whispers were louder now, circling them. Rachel's flashlight flickered, and in the corner of the room she saw a pale figure, an old man, dripping water as if he had risen from the sea, staring at them with hollow eyes. The friends screamed, and the figure vanished, but not before the temperature dropped even further, their breath visible in the candlelight. The lighthouse tower suddenly groaned. Steps above them crumbled as if someone, or something, was descending from the top. Shadows elongated along the spiral staircase. One of the friends, Jason, swore he saw a hand reach out from the railing, grasping at him. They ran toward the entrance, but the fog outside had thickened, swallowing the cliffs and the path to their vehicles. It was as if the lighthouse itself had shifted in space. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time felt distorted. Every turn led them back to the same room, the same symbols on the wall. The whispers became words. "You shouldn't have come, you should have stayed." Panic set in, their shouts echoing back to them, distorted. Rachel tried the windows. They were opaque now, not glass but a mirror reflecting the lighthouse interior. And in those reflections they saw themselves, but not quite. The images were twisted, smiling in ways they were not. By 3 a.m. Rachel was the only one conscious. Her friends were slumped on the floor, eyes open but unresponsive. The figure of the lighthouse keeper appeared again, this time at the top of the spiral stairs, staring at her. A wave of dread froze her in place. She felt drawn toward him, compelled to climb the staircase, the fog pressing in behind her. Just as her hand touched the railing, she heard a scream, her own, or was it one of her friends? When the morning fog lifted, townsfolk found the lighthouse empty. No trace of Rachel or her friends remained. The lighthouse stood silent, its walls still streaked with strange symbols. Locals said that on New Year's Eve, if the fog rolls in thick and the ocean churns oddly, you can hear faint voices calling from the tower, "Another year, another midnight, another visitor." Even now, Rachel's phone sits on a windowsill at her apartment in Portland, buzzing at exactly midnight every New Year's Eve. No calls. No messages. Just a faint whisper, "We're waiting." It was New Year's Eve, and Alex had been driving for hours to meet his friends at an old hotel tucked away on the outskirts of Vermont. The place was famous locally for its history, a century-old building that had once been a grand resort but had been abandoned for decades after a series of unexplained deaths. The plan was simple: rent a few rooms, celebrate quietly, and toast to the new year far from the city lights. When Alex arrived, the hotel looked worse than the pictures online. Its paint was peeling, windows boarded, and the front door hung loosely on its hinges. But the group was determined. They pushed the door open, stepping into the lobby. The air was thick with mildew and dust. A grand chandelier swayed slightly above them, though no wind blew inside. The floorboards groaned under every step. By 11 p.m., they had explored the first 2 floors, finding rooms to sleep in and a small bar they'd set up for drinks. Laughter echoed through the halls, but shadows seemed to move independently of the candlelight. When Alex went to check one of the upper corridors, he noticed scratches along the walls, long, deep gouges that looked like claws had been dragged along the paint. "Probably rats," he muttered, but even he didn't sound convinced. As the clock approached midnight, the atmosphere grew heavier. The temperature dropped suddenly. Alex's breath fogged in the dim light. Whispers began to drift from the hallway, soft voices murmuring words he couldn't understand. "Did you hear that?" someone asked. The group nodded nervously. At midnight, they gathered in the grand ballroom, a massive space with cracked mirrors and broken chandeliers. The old clock struck 12, and for a moment the hotel was silent. Then the music started, slow, distorted, like a piano being played underwater. Shadows danced along the walls, though no one moved the lights. The group froze, staring at each other. Something was wrong. Suddenly, the floor beneath them vibrated. Doors slammed on every floor, and a low moan echoed from somewhere deep in the hotel. Alex turned to run, but the hallways seemed longer, twisting impossibly as if the building itself was alive. Rooms appeared where none had been before. Mirrors reflected not their faces, but figures in tattered clothing, moving silently behind them. One of the friends, Emily, screamed as a hand appeared on the mirror, pressing against the glass from the other side, blackened and decayed. Alex tried to pull her back, but the reflection reached out further, dragging at the fabric of reality. The friends scattered, their footsteps echoing in endless corridors that seemed to stretch forever. By 2 a.m., Alex found himself back in the lobby alone. The chandelier above swung violently, and the whispers now surrounded him, chanting incomprehensible words. He stumbled outside, gasping for air. The night was silent, the hotel still as abandoned as it had seemed when he arrived. But the scratches along the walls, the cold footprints in the dust, and the shadows moving inside the dark windows told a different story. Even weeks later, Alex couldn't forget the hotel. Every reflection in a store window or rearview mirror seemed to show someone standing behind him, always just out of reach, always watching. And he wondered, when the clock strikes midnight again, would the hotel call him back or claim someone new? It was just past midnight on a cold December night when Jenna and her friends arrived at the secluded cabin in the woods. The New Year's Eve party they had planned was supposed to be unforgettable, a small escape from the city with a few close friends, music, and champagne. The winding road leading up to the cabin was dark and lined with trees, their bare branches scraping against the windows of the car as if warning them to turn back. When they stepped inside, the smell of old pine and dust filled the air. The cabin was charming, with stone walls, creaking wooden floors, and a massive fireplace, but something about it felt off. Jenna shook off the unease, telling herself it was just the isolation. Everyone unpacked, set up decorations, and turned on the speakers. Laughter echoed off the walls, but beneath it, a cold draft whispered through the cracks of the old building. Around 12:30 a.m., as they were pouring drinks, one of Jenna's friends, Mark, noticed something strange outside the window. Shadows moved across the tree line, flickering in the light of the full moon. He pointed and everyone paused. "It's probably just deer," he said, but even he didn't sound convinced. Moments later, a sudden gust slammed the door shut, sending a chill through the room. Jenna went to check, thinking the wind had blown it closed. But when she stepped outside, the woods were empty. No animals, no one, just the same dark trees stretching endlessly. A faint sound drifted from the distance. A slow, deliberate tapping, like someone walking carefully on the frozen ground. Her friends came out to join her, laughter masking their nerves, but the sound didn't stop. By 1 a.m. the atmosphere shifted. Candles flickered despite no draft, and the fireplace suddenly roared to life on its own. Then the lights dimmed, plunging the cabin into semi-darkness. Phones and flashlights all flickered and died. Panic started to rise. "This isn't funny," whispered Sarah, clutching a blanket around her shoulders. Jenna felt a pressure in the air, like the cabin itself was watching them. They huddled together in the living room, trying to ignore the strange noises echoing through the cabin. It wasn't wind. It wasn't branches. It was footsteps, slow, heavy, circling the cabin, pausing at the windows. Then a voice. A whisper so soft it was barely audible, yet unmistakably human. "You shouldn't be here." No one responded. The fear was too thick and the whispers grew louder, echoing inside their heads. Shadows moved independently of the moonlight. Objects shifted on their own. The antique clock on the wall struck 2 a.m., but the chimes sounded distorted, like it was vibrating from another realm. Suddenly one of the friends screamed. Jenna turned to see Mark frozen, staring at the fireplace. A figure had emerged from the flames, a woman in a tattered dress, her eyes hollow, her mouth opening in a silent scream. The room grew icy cold. The walls seemed to close in. Every reflection in the mirrors, the windows, even the glasses on the table showed her image, but closer, darker, watching. They ran to the bedrooms, locking doors and barricading themselves. Hours passed. Nothing moved, and yet the feeling of being hunted never left. Every tick of the clock, every creak of the floor made them jump. When dawn finally broke, the house seemed normal again. But the footprints outside the cabin told a different story. They were large, clawed, and led right up to the door, and vanished into thin air. Jenna and her friends left immediately, vowing never to return. But even now, months later, whenever Jenna passes a reflective surface at night, she swears she sees the same hollow-eyed woman standing behind her, watching, waiting, and she wonders, what really happened in that cabin that midnight? It was the last night of the year when Daniel received a text from an unknown number. You can't escape what watches at midnight. At first, he thought it was a prank, a Halloween leftover joke carried into New Year's Eve. But the timing was uncanny. Daniel had just moved into a small, secluded cabin in Vermont, tucked deep into the woods. The previous owner had left in a hurry, selling it at half price, citing strange occurrences that he refused to explain. By 11:30 p.m., Daniel had invited his friends over to celebrate the new year quietly. The cabin creaked with age, wind rattling the windows, snow piling against the walls. Candles flickered in the corners, shadows stretching long across the floor. At exactly midnight, the power cut out. Phones and flashlights died simultaneously. The only illumination came from the moon, pale through the snowstorm outside. A sudden knock echoed from the front door. Slow, deliberate. Daniel's friends froze. Who would be out in this weather? Whispered Emily. The knock came again, heavier, more insistent. They opened the door to find nothing. Just footprints in the snow leading away into the forest, too large to be human, disappearing into the white haze. Inside, the temperature dropped sharply. Their breath became visible. Then came the whispers, low and melodic, calling their names. Daniel. Emily. Come to us. The friends tried to laugh it off, but the sound of breaking glass upstairs silenced them. They ran toward the noise and found all the mirrors in the cabin shattered. In each shard they saw their reflections, but twisted, grinning, moving independently. Suddenly the cabin door slammed shut behind them. The windows darkened as if the night itself had entered. The whispers became voices, arguing, crying, screaming, all overlapping. Daniel's friends began to act strangely, speaking in tones not their own, muttering things that made no sense. He tried to pull them back, but their bodies moved like puppets, guided by unseen hands. Daniel ran to the fireplace and found a hidden trapdoor behind the woodpile. He lifted it, revealing a steep stone staircase leading down. A faint blue light glowed below. Against his better judgment, he descended. The air smelled of earth, decay, and iron. At the bottom, a circular chamber appeared, walls carved with faces screaming silently. In the center, a shallow pool of water reflected the moonlight from above, but the water rippled with shapes, shadows, faces moving beneath the surface. One figure stepped from the water, a man, pale, eyes hollow, wearing a tattered cloak. He raised a hand toward Daniel. Midnight is the hour of reckoning, the figure whispered. You invited them here, now they belong to us. Daniel realized with horror that this figure was connected to the previous owners. Each had vanished at midnight, consumed by whatever haunted this place. From above, the voices of his friends screamed. Daniel turned to flee, climbing the staircase, but the trapdoor slammed shut. The chamber seemed to stretch endlessly, the walls closing in. Desperate, he smashed a torch against the stone and ran blindly through the passages, hearing footsteps echoing behind him. Dozens, hundreds, all moving in rhythm, closing in. When the first light of New Year's morning broke through the snowstorm, local authorities found the cabin empty. No signs of Daniel or his friends, just the shattered mirrors and the faint sound of whispers trapped in the walls. Some said the cabin had always been haunted, that the forest itself was alive with watchers, but no one could explain why only on New Year's Eve did it claim its victims. Years later, hikers reported seeing lights in the cabin windows on New Year's Eve, though the place had been abandoned. Sometimes, they said, a figure could be glimpsed in the shadows, standing by the broken mirrors, watching, waiting, whispering to anyone foolish enough to approach. Midnight is yours now. Are you ready? It was New Year's Eve in a small town in Oregon when Sarah received a strange invitation slipped under her door. Celebrate midnight with us, if you dare. There was no name, just the address of an abandoned mansion at the edge of the river. Normally she would have ignored it, but curiosity and a strange pull she couldn't explain made her take the drive. The mansion was enormous, Victorian, its paint peeling, windows boarded but with faint candlelight flickering inside. As Sarah approached, she saw silhouettes moving behind the curtains, like shadows of people frozen mid-motion. The air smelled of damp wood and something else, metallic, sharp like blood. Inside, the hallways were long and twisted. She found a grand ballroom, lit only by chandeliers swinging gently as if moved by invisible hands. In the center, a circle of masked figures danced slowly, rhythmically, chanting in a language she didn't understand. Every tick of the grandfather clock echoed like a drum in her chest. Midnight was approaching. Sarah's footsteps echoed on the polished floor. The masked dancers paused and turned toward her. Their faces were obscured, but the eyes, gleaming through the masks, locked onto her. "You're early," one voice whispered low, almost inside her head. "Midnight has its rules." A chill ran down her spine. She tried to leave, but the doors slammed shut. Windows darkened. The shadows on the walls began to move independently, stretching toward her like fingers. Panic set in. She ran through the hallways, doors appearing and disappearing, stairs leading into walls, hallways looping back impossibly. In the library, she found books scattered across the floor. Each open to pages with illustrations of people with masks like the one she had seen, their bodies frozen in terror. A journal lay among them. The last entry read, "At midnight, the revelers take the curious. If you see this, do not follow the invitation. Do not enter. They will not let you leave." The clock began to chime. 1, 2, 3. Sarah froze. The masked figures appeared behind her, silent now. She felt herself being pulled, like invisible hands gripping her shoulders. She fought, screaming, but her voice echoed back distorted, replaced by whispers, "Join us, join us." Suddenly, she saw herself reflected in a cracked mirror. Her own reflection grinned at her with eyes that were not hers. She realized she had become the next participant, destined to dance in the circle until the next fool followed the invitation. The masked figures faded, leaving her alone, but the mirror's reflection watched her, always watching. When the clock struck 1, the mansion was empty. Outside, the town celebrated fireworks, laughter, and joy. No one knew of the young woman lost to the mansion that night, swallowed by shadows that only moved at midnight. The invitation disappeared, only to reappear under another door, somewhere else, waiting for the next curious soul.